Okay, whoa, this video was hard to make and I'm Julian.
And I'm Ashley.
We are from JulianTechTM and today we will be teaching you how to build a PC. It's been a long time coming and the reason is because it was damn hard to do. So I will be handling the hardware side, so means where to get the components, how to build the PC.
Right, okay,
Yes.
and I will be doing the software side, which involves how to set up your BIOS, how to install Windows, and how to install all your drivers. But before we get into that, I want to thank our sponsors for today. As you can see, everything here is from Gigabyte Aorus. So big shout out to them. So if you want to consider getting something from them, similar to what Julian gave me in the previous video, yeah, this is something that you can definitely get. And look, color coordinated, very nice, huh?
Yeah, thank you Gigabyte for supplying these components. It's just one thing less to worry.
That's right.
Now let's go on to hardware. So what components do you need to build a PC? You need a CPU, CPU cooler, motherboard, GPU, RAM, storage, either HDD, SSD, NVMe SSD, or a combination of the three, PSU, and case. Only tool you need is a Swiss Army knife that hopefully has a Phillips screwdriver. I mean, you just need a Phillips screwdriver. If you are planning to install an M.2 NVMe SSD, you might need a smaller bit screwdriver because the screws are smaller lah. Other tools that may help you are torchlight, pliers, wire cutter, zip tie, and if you have carpeted floors, anti-static wristband, because static can damage your PC components. Next, where can you buy these PC components? In Singapore, you basically have two places you can go: the online stores and offline stores, physical stores. Online stores consist of Lazada, Shopee, Amazon.sg, and for physical stores you have places like, same name square lah. Both have their pros and cons. For online stores, there's tons of advantages. You don't have to leave your house. You get to order everything in the comfort of your own home. You can compare prices easily at a glance. But there are disadvantages too, and they come in the form of shipping fees and higher prices. There are few PC component deals online, so you are not getting your value for money. And not forgetting shipping timings, because you can only start building when every single component is here. So if every component comes within a day, except for that one component that takes 1 week to arrive, you cannot start your PC build. For physical stores in Sim Lim Square, the best part of it is that if you buy multiple parts, meaning all your components of a PC, they will give you a good discount. And sometimes they even build the PC for free. But why you want to do that? Where got fun? But you do have to set aside some time to go there. Sometimes it might take 1 hour, sometimes it might take 6. The timing will vary depending on the parts you want. Sometimes there might be no stock and it might take some time to take the stocks you want. And if you don't drive, you have to take a Grab or taxi, which might add the cost of the building of PC. You can take bus lah, but carry the thing heavy, that's also a cons lah, tiring. So let's get into the build. So the goal of this PC is to have a high-end all AMD build. Yes, we are going Team Red. So this PC will roughly cost $3,000, but I'll have the exact price around. I know this will be over budget for a lot of y'all. Don't worry, I will provide cheaper alternative to the individual PC components in the form of supers like this. So let's get our hands dirty. For today's build, I got the Aorus X570 Extreme. This board has it all. It has the X570 chipset, obviously, 3 slots of M.2, 6 SATA ports, USB Type-C 3.2 front panel connector, Wi-Fi 6 and 10G LAN to name a few. For people who overclock, this board features an easy clear CMOS button at the back, Q-code LED display, 2x8 CPU power connector, power and reset switch, and the board is designed for easy voltage measurements. The majority of you probably won't need most of the features I mentioned, but this may give you an idea on what to look out for in a motherboard. So you can buy a motherboard that's suitable for your needs. So you want to prepare your motherboard by unboxing your motherboard and placing it on top of the motherboard box. I'm putting it upright so that I can show you guys better. Then you can prepare your CPU. I got the AMD Ryzen 9 5900X. Look for the triangle on the CPU, then locate a similar triangle on the CPU socket on the motherboard. Take out your CPU by holding it by the sides. Be very careful not to touch the gold pins. Lift up the metal arm on the CPU socket. Align the triangle on the CPU to the triangle on the socket. Drop the CPU gently into the socket.
No force is required and it should fit easily into the socket. After that, put the metal arm down. Next, RAM. I have a 2x8 GB of 3600 MHz with 2 sticks of LED. Yes, they are just sticks with LED. Refer to the motherboard manual to identify the first priority dual channel slots. They are typically the second and fourth slots. Check the manual to be sure. Once you have identified the slots, unlock the RAM slot by pulling down the catches at the sides. Align the RAM notch to the RAM slot and push evenly and firmly until you hear a click. Make sure both sides are locked in place. If it doesn't fit, it's probably in the wrong orientation or you might have put the wrong type of RAM. Next, the NVMe SSD. I have one Aorus Gen 4 500GB NVMe SSD. Find the standoff screw in the motherboard box and install it on the M.2 slot. Align the connectors of the NVMe SSD to the slot and push it in. Screw the NVMe to the standoff. Next, the CPU cooler. This will vary depending on the cooler you have. For now, I have the Aorus all-in-one 240mm liquid cooler. First, you need to understand fan intake and exhaust. The front is where you can see the logo. This is the intake of the fan. And the rear, where there are plastic supports, is the exhaust side. This cooler comes with 2 fans. For this setup, I'm going to place the fan with the exhaust side facing the radiator. Screwing 4 screws for each fan into the radiator with the screws provided with the cooler, ensuring that the fan cable faces the back of the PC to help with your cable management. After you're done, add the AMD mount on the copper base. Next, prepare your motherboard by unscrewing the 2 brackets, then screw in the correct screws that come with your AIO cooler. This is different for other CPU coolers, so do refer to the manual if you are unsure. Next, add your thermal paste. I'll be doing the X method for this build. Then you can screw in the copper base to the socket, making sure to tighten the screw in a crisscross manner. Be careful not to tighten one side too much as this will put uneven pressure on the thermal paste and the CPU. And that is bad. Now, prepare your case by unscrewing the side panels, laying it flat, and make sure the PC is free from any cables. If you have a ATX board, make sure you have nice standoffs at these 9 areas before you install the motherboard in the case. It's here, 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 and here. Now you can lower your motherboard carefully into the case and align the screw holes of the motherboard to the standoff. Screw in the motherboard with confidence, but not too tight, with the screws provided with the case. To be safe, you can do a crisscross manner as well, making sure not to over tighten them as this can bend the motherboard and that's not good. I wanted to put the radiator at the top of the case, but the motherboard's heatsink was in the way, so I had to put the radiator at the front. To access the front of the case, just use brute force to open it. Then you will need 8 screws that comes with the cooler to screw it in. I have set up so that the tubes will flow downwards. This will reduce air bubbles from forming in your AIO cooler. This will also prolong the life of your AIO liquid cooler. Now pull the AIO cooler and the fan cables through the back of the PC. Check to see if the cables are long enough to reach the fan headers. And you also can do some cable management if you want. Next, the hard disk drive. Locate the 3.5-inch bay in your case. This will vary depending on your case. For this case, the 3.5 bays require 4 screws at the bottom of the HDD, and then screw the brackets with the HDD back into the case. Next, the PSU. I'm using the Gigabyte P750GM modular power supply. If you're using a non-modular power supply, you can skip to this timing. If you're using a modular power supply, continue watching. Find out what cables you need for your motherboard, HDD, SSD, GPU, and any additional LED lights you want to run. You will need the 24-pin connectors for your motherboard, 2x8-pin connectors for your CPU. I will be only running one HDD, so I will need just one SATA cable, and one PCIe 6+2 pin. If you want more RGB, you may need additional power cables depending on your case or the LED strips you have. Insert the required cables to the PSU. Install the PSU by screwing 4 screws at the allocated slot. For this case, is at the bottom of the case towards the back. Now is one of the tedious part of PC building. Your power cables and your case cables. Let's start with the smallest connectors, which are usually the hardest. Make sure the cables are not tangled with any other cables. Refer to your motherboard manual to identify the correct pins. Fit the right connector to the right pin. The power connector can be put in both ways, but the LED positive connector must be placed to the positive pin. and negative connectors to the negative pin. This is a little bit hard to show on camera, but I can show you pictures so that you know what to look out for. Next, you can connect the USB 2 if you have. For this case, there is only USB 3, audio connector, and any fan connectors that you need to put. Do be careful with the audio connectors, because the audio connectors and the USB connectors look very similar. But if you look very carefully at the connector head, one of the 10 pins is covered. You cannot put the audio connector to the USB header and vice versa. So whatever you do, just don't force anything in. For USB 3 cable, there is a notch on one side of the head. You can only insert it in one direction. Don't force anything in. Next, you want to power your HDD with the SATA power cable and have a SATA cable to connect the HDD to the motherboard. The AIO cooler has two extra cables that you need to plug in. One is a USB 2, so you can control the AIO liquid cooler, and the other is a power SATA connector. This will power the AIO. Next, you can run the 24-pin motherboard cable to the motherboard. Then you have the 2x8 CPU power cable that you can run through the top of the case for easy cable management. And now, the most exciting part. Installing your GPU. I have the AMD Radeon RX 6800 XT Gigabyte Gaming OC 16G. That's right. Firstly, identify the correct PCIe slot by referring to the motherboard manual. There are usually multiple PCIe slots, so make sure you identify the correct one. It's usually the top one. Next, place the GPU against the slot and look at the back of the case to identify which PCIe bracket to remove. Depending on your case, some brackets need to be pulled off with pliers while others need to be unscrewed. Unlock the catch of the PCIe slot and firmly insert the GPU into the slot. Aligning it to the PCIe bracket, the catch should click in place once the GPU is inserted. Secure the GPU to the PCIe bracket with screws. Now connect the PCIe power to the GPU. And we are almost done. Before you do cable management, you want to plug everything in and make sure that everything is running fine, because you don't want to do your cable management only to find out that your PC is not running. For cable management, it can be a video on its own, but let me give you a few tips. You don't want the cables to overlap or tangle with each other. The human eye likes things to be straight and organized, so do have more straight cables than diagonal. Unfortunately, the AIO cables are too short for them to do this, so that's the only diagonal cable you can see. But what you want is a lot of zip ties, a lot of velcro, and you want to just tie down everything. Make sure not to make it too thick, because that may hinder the side panels from closing properly. Do let me know in the comments if you want to see a dedicated video for cable management. Then once you're done, you can close everything up and you are done. And then it's on to software.
Alright, now that your PC is complete, it's time to take a look inside and confirm that you've done everything right. You'll need a monitor, keyboard, and mouse for this part, so remember to connect these to your PC. Start up your computer by pressing the power button and spam the delete button to bring up the BIOS menu. Gigabyte's BIOS starts up in easy mode, but if your BIOS happens to start up in advanced mode, don't panic. Just search for the key to change it to easy mode. Two things you need to do here. One, check to see if everything you've connected is being registered by the PC. Your RAM, SSD, HDD, etc. Two, turn on your XMP profile to ensure that your RAM is running at the most optimal speed. Now on to installing Windows and drivers. You'll need two empty 8GB thumb drives and another computer. Plug in one thumb drive into the other computer and head to the Microsoft website to download the Windows 10 installation media. Run the media creation tool and select Create Installation Media. You can use the recommended settings and select USB flash drive to select your thumb drive you want to put the Windows installer on. This thumb drive will be used to install Windows later on. The second thumb drive is going to be used for your BIOS firmware. You need to search online for your motherboard's BIOS firmware. You'll usually find it on the brand's website. Here I found the BIOS firmware for the X570 Aorus Extreme on Gigabyte's website under support. Download the latest firmware into the second thumb drive. Unzip the files if needed. This part is very important. I recommend that you also download the motherboard's LAN drivers just in case the motherboard requires updates before it can access the internet. Now with these thumb drives, go back to your brand new PC. Plug in the second thumb drive with your BIOS firmware and start up the PC, spamming the delete button until you get to the BIOS menu again. Once you're in the BIOS, look for the flash utility button, in which you should see your thumb drive. From there, you can update the BIOS firmware, remove the thumb drive when you are done updating everything. Because both my CPU and GPU are from AMD, I can actually turn on Smart Access Memory, or SAM for short. To do this, you need to go to the BIOS and you need to go to the advanced mode for BIOS. So under advanced mode, you go to settings, IO ports, and you need to do two things. You need to enable above 4G decoding and set resize bar support to auto. Click save and exit, and SAM is set up. If your PC is brand new, plugging in that first thumb drive with the Windows installation media is all you need to do. But if you already have Windows on your SSD, you can either boot up the PC from your SSD, or you can install a fresh copy of Windows by going to the boot sequence and shifting the thumb drive to the first priority slot. Once you've done all this, click save and exit the BIOS. The PC will restart and your Windows installation should begin automatically. Remember to select custom installation and you want to install Windows onto your SSD. Here, I'm going to install it onto my Aorus Gen 4 NVMe SSD, which I identified by its 500GB size. Follow the rest of the steps and you'll have Windows installed in no time. Once Windows is installed, you'll need to install the rest of the drivers. If you've already downloaded all the motherboard drivers into that second thumb drive, you can just click on the files and your drivers will be installed. If not, you can download it straight from the motherboard's website under the support section. So I'm going to need to get the latest drivers for the 6800 XT. To do this, I'm going to just Google 6800 XT drivers and it will direct me to the AMD Radeon website where I can download the AMD Radeon software, and this software will basically update all the drivers for me. After this, go to check for updates in the Windows settings to update Windows if need be. One last thing you need to do, if you have a brand new HDD, you need to initialize it. Go to disk management in your Windows settings under create and format hard disk partitions. You will see all the storage options that you have plugged into the PC. On the disk label unknown, right-click and select Initialize Disk. And you're done with the software side.
Thank you Ashley for teaching them about the software side. I feel you can get better performance if you get a bigger case, or like taking out this stupid LED thing, because I think that is like making it hotter. So the
For real? Like,
yeah, I think so.
The acrylic is actually...
Maybe, because it's stopping airflow.
Oh.
So it is getting a little bit hot. Yeah.
Okay, so this is our first time doing a tutorial of any sorts, and it was pretty freaking hard. Like, there were so many different moving parts and there were just so many things for us to put together. So props to Julian, he did a really good job of putting everything together.
It was hard.
So yeah, at the end of the day, we hope that, you know, we go through this struggle so that you don't have to go through any of the struggle at all. So if we've missed anything out, you just let us know in the comment section what you would like to see in the future, and we will most probably do an updated version of this tutorial in the near future.
Because this is a high-end AMD. You can do a low-end, you can do a mid-range, and then you can do like, and then we can do like even higher.
The highest of the highest of the
still got
highest.
6900 XT leh. Still got 6900 XT, yeah.
Okay, so you've been building PCs for so long, right, Ju? But then, like, what is one thing that you learned from this PC build in particular?
You know, starting this channel, we get to use high-end motherboards. This is the X570 Gigabyte Extreme. And it's a lot of features that I never knew I wanted.
But now you do.
Yeah. So like the voltage measurements made really easy. Other motherboards have 10 gig extension, PCIe extension. This has it in the board. So it has 10 gig, it has Wi-Fi. It's a bit counterproductive to have both, but it has, you know, like...
If you want both, you know, if you want both, you can have both now.
So this board, I would say, is a overclocker's dream. You have almost everything.
Is it not considered best of both worlds?
It's best of both worlds, but yeah, like I said, price lah.
Price
$900 online. But yeah, I did put in a lot of alternative parts. So I hope you guys appreciate that. I guess we're done.
I guess.
Yeah, I guess we're done.
We're done.
Thank you so much for watching.